This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. It's podcast number 311, and for this episode of the podcast, 311. It's the informational episode of the podcast. We're up in Alpine, California, outside of San Diego, for really fun. I've been wanting to do this episode for an incredibly long time. Joining me is Shawn McIlhenney from McIlhenney Brewing here in Alpine. You may know them from the old brewery here, Alpine Brewing, that they was here before, which has its own story. We're not going to get into that too much. But here we are at the site of that original Alpine Brewery. Shawn, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah. And we're drinking this iteration. I'm drinking Months right now.
Right.
Your iteration of a classic beer, that has its roots in the beer Alpine Nelson,
right.
A beer that's such a touchstone for so many brewers that really became a foundational, beer. Became many people's first experience with Southern Hemisphere hops. At least many people here in North America. It became one of those. That beer was a leading proponent for this entire category of hops, and actually, helped change the IPA landscape. It's kind of cool, to think about the impact that a beer can have like that.
It was a catalyst. Great beer, great hops. Kind of owed all to my dad. It was 2003 when he was in New Zealand celebrating his 25th wedding anniversary, and he and my mom traveling through the countryside in New Zealand, saw hops growing, stopped, found out where they were, and God, it took us almost a year and a half, almost 2 years to get the hops from New Zealand to San Diego. Customs blew their minds when they were, what the heck are these things coming through? Hops, what is it? Took a month of sitting at customs to get the hops here, and then was born a golden rye IPA.
And the rest is history. Well, we're going to talk about that history, and we're going to talk about the way that McIlhenney now takes that long legacy of brewing with these hops, shapes into so many creative expressions. We're going to kind of dig into how you all think about these things, and then get the most out of these hops, because this episode has to focus on hops. Before we do that, for years, G&D Chillers has chilled the beers you love. Partnering with 3,000 plus breweries across the country, they're proud of the cool partnerships they've built, offering 24/7 service and support. G&D builds with non-proprietary parts, expert craftsmanship, and constant innovation. G&D's in-house engineering crew have been piping breweries, wineries, and distilleries for over 30 years. They offer free piping design and consultation with the sale of every chiller they build. Reach out for a quote today at gdchillers.com or call to discuss your next project. Also, this episode is sponsored by BSG, proud distributor of New Zealand Hops Limited, who invites you to experience Nectaron, an aromatic New Zealand hop drenched by tropical waterfalls of grapefruit, passion fruit, pineapple, and peach. Nectaron is in stock and ready to ship, so order now and unlock the delicious citrus potential of your next IPA or any IPA. Contact your BSG sales rep with any questions or visit bsgcraftbrewing.com/hops to learn more. See, it's way easier to get those hops now, Shawn. But we'll talk more about that. Like I said, also scheduling freight carriers should be the last thing on a brewer's mind. So why not trust the experts to handle freight for your ingredients? Old Orchard has partnered with a leading logistics firm in the craft beverage industry to transport your flavored craft concentrate blends. When you order 2 pails or more from Old Orchard, you qualify for freight quotes. To get started, head on over to oldorchard.com/brewer. Also, if you're a brewery in planning or just kicking around the idea, head on over to breweryworkshop.com. Learn more about our fall brewery accelerator event in Denver. It's a 4-day intensive on starting a brewery designed to help you understand what you don't know that you don't know. Learn more at breweryworkshop.com. So, Shawn, let's talk about McIlhenney. Give me the history in this place, this town. You've got a lot of history in it. Your dad has a lot of history in it.
That's right.
Like the town, the location, where the brewery is, the room we're sitting in now. That's now your tap room. Like all of this, it's very connecting and it's very rooting. This is a brewery that's of the place and connected to it. So yeah. Tell me the story.
It was definitely a homecoming moment. The space became available to us shortly after COVID had hit. Crap hit the fan and things weren't good in the beer industry, especially in San Diego. We acquired the space here that we originally started Alpine Beer with, upgraded our brew house, and started brewing beer about 2.5 years ago, almost. I'm sorry, 2 years ago. We just celebrated our 2-year anniversary.
It's funny having a 2-year anniversary for a place and a family that's been brewing here in this location for as long as you have. Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
But I understand. Yeah. When the last time I was here was, I think, 2014, and it was, everything was out of the brew house, a couple doors down from where we are now.
That's right.
I shouldn't say everything. There was the restaurant was right here, but I remember getting growlers filled back there, back in the day. And it's still there. You've still got the cellar there. You've got a new brew house in the same location, and it's still making beer the way that you always made it. Well, maybe a little more sophisticated now than it was back then. But.
Yeah, we have access to numerous new and awesome ingredients and techniques that weren't really being experimented with back then. So it's all about progression, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, moving forward. And
if we rewind to those early days, tell me the story about your dad getting into brewing and launching the original Alpine Brewery.
Back in the mid-'80s, my dad, while being a full-time career firefighter, experimented with homebrewing. A lot of firefighters have extra time on their hands when they're not at work, and a lot of them have second jobs. My dad approached homebrewing with the intention of making it a second career, and exceeded at it, excelled even, took some courses from UC Davis, microbiology and sanitation for the brewing industry and practical brewing sciences, and applied all that to opening the brewery here. Got a really good leg up in the industry by being able to brew Alpine beer before he even had a brewery or location, through the help of AleSmith and Peter Zian and Skip Virgilio. I think Skip still owned it at that point. Really helped out and kickstarted Alpine Beer once we found a location in a brew house, moved everything in, and it was go, go, go. From 2002 to about 2004, it was mostly my dad. I helped out in any capacity he would let me, worked from the bottom up, washing kegs, and graduated to, cleaning tanks, and then it was bottling beer, and then it was, hey, help clean the brewing equipment, or now it's time to mash out. And then 2006, it was got my opportunity to brew a batch of beer, and the rest is history. I liked it.
Yeah, 2006. So you became brewer for Alpine then.
Correct. Yeah. And it was it started with a big old double IPA for the Petesport Strong Ale Festival, and the first keg to kick during the fest, and it was a pretty good intro to brewing beer.
So those were different days for hoppy beer here on the West Coast. It's still like early budding days, for what we now consider, such a classic and timeless West Coast style. Like, we forget that it's not that old, and it went through a lot of development in those mid 2000s. What talk to me about going through that and how you all, in conversation with other brewers, making beers that challenged each other and showed what was possible, kept pushing each other, to help develop these beers in the directions that they did.
Yeah. Let me start by saying one of the great things about San Diego beer in general, probably the brewing industry as a whole during that time, was a sense of cooperative competition.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to see everybody do good. And so there weren't really many secrets. If you had a question you wanted to ask, you just ask it. And the feedback you got was, there was never any proprietary information. It was, what do you want to know? I'll tell you what you can do or how you can do it. And, that helped. The idea for some of our IPAs really came about from our bestsellers, right? Mm-hmm. The pure hoppiness, the exponential hoppiness, or the duets, and these influential beers that were kind of run-of-the-mill for us at the time. We wanted to explore flavor and expression and see how far we could push boundaries and still keep the beer drinkable while approaching almost double-digit ABVs. And It was just fun experimenting with beer.
Makes it sound so easy, so simple, but these were still, fairly revolutionary things at the time, and definitely pushing this edge of where these flavors are going, by pulling out the more bodybuilding malts that had historically been an IPA. When I say historically, I mean for the previous 8 or 9 years,
right?
Because that history of IPA is not exactly, as an American craft style. As of the mid 2000s, it was still pretty fresh and young and developing at that point too.
Yeah.
And so where did you find that inspiration, and what was it like? Hey, what if we do this? Why do we push it this way?
A lot of it came from what we wanted to drink, right? Obviously, we're chasing our taste buds or our palates, and it was lucky for us that the general consumer had very similar or paralleling taste buds and flavor cravings. And from that, it was what ingredients are accessible, what can we get? Basically, focusing on quality was paramount.
Well, then the hops, of course, were, in that mid 2000s. All of a sudden there were new things that were available to then brew with.
Right.
And those ingredients could also serve as some inspiration for where you could go.
Right. Yeah. In the early 2000s, we were introduced to hops like Simcoe and Citra and, these flavors and aromas that we weren't used to with the hops that we had readily available at the time. And so it was, trying to extract as much of that new flavor and character from the hops as possible, and doing that through fermentation. And, I guess we were on the early kick of thiols and just didn't really even know it. Right?
You had to import your own New Zealand hops in order to get your thiol fix in there.
Yep.
But you were on the thiol craze before it became, well, I should say, you probably helped create the thiol craze if we're really going back and looking at it. Anyway, I want to talk more about New Zealand hops, and then, of course, how you brew with those and how you've structured beers in order to, to bring out some of those flavors and, build this across the spectrum. Before we do that, take your brewing to the next level with AccuBrew's revolutionary fermentation monitoring system, now predicting specific gravity. AccuBrew's mobile app and stainless steel sensor work together to send you live data from inside your tanks, including predicted gravity, fermentation activity, clarity, and temperature. Unlike other fermentation monitoring systems, AccuBrew is CIP ready and designed to stay out of your way, saving you time and space. Their set it and forget it solution streamlines systems and processes, helps maintain consistency and detect problems before they ruin a batch. Join the AccuBrew community today and experience 24/7 peace of mind. Also, brewing is currently one of the most innovative, adaptive, and fast-paced industries in the world. With consumer demand shifting to the latest and greatest trend, it can be difficult for production teams to keep up with requirements. The ProFill series of rotary can fillers from ProBrew are accelerating plant production everywhere. These can fillers run at speeds between 100 and 600 plus cans per minute, while achieving precise and consistent filling volumes not achievable by most inline and mobile fillers. For more information, visit www.probrew.com or email contactus@probrew.com. to learn exactly how they can take your operations to the next level. ProBrew, brew your beer. And Tabsky QR code ordering is the future of brewery ordering. With Tabsky, your customers can order and pay for their beers right from their phones by scanning a QR code at the table. Get rid of lengthy lines and increase check sizes by up to 30%. Tabsky is free for operators and integrates seamlessly with popular payment systems like Clover and Square. So why not join the future of brewery ordering and give Tabsky a try? Learn how you can get started today at Tabsky, TABSKI.com. So let's talk about, building some of these seminal, some foundational, inspirational, New Zealand hop or Southern Hemisphere hopped beers. As you and your dad were, I guess this was originally your dad, but then, you also took over some role in helping hone and shape these things in the mid 2000s with these some Southern Hemisphere hopped beers. How did you all start thinking about those, and how did you decide, start building recipes that helped these hops express in that kind of lyrical way?
Most of the recipes came from being reverse engineered. You kind of came up with an idea of what you wanted the final product to be, and then worked backwards. And that's where the fine tuning came in, and trying to hone that to get exactly what you wanted. which was really difficult.
How do you design? Like, how do you work that way? Like, do you? You say, well, this is what I want to taste like. Are those words? Do you articulate that?
Yeah, it's more of a feeling, I guess.
Okay.
Thinking of, warm moments in beer history, that first sip of, some IPA from, some awesome brewer it's that light bulb moment, try to recreate that or put your own spin on it. It's, just trying to keep brewing fun still, which it is again for the first time and long time, which I love it. But New Zealand hops in particular, because of their unique terroir, nothing else is like them. The fact that New Zealand doesn't use herbicides, pesticides, or pesticides, no infestations of anything makes them far superior. You get organic quality without the hefty price tag of being, considered organic. And just the flavor expressions and aromas that you get out of these hops are unlike anything else you can get in the world. You try to make those unique flavors and aromas shine as bright as you can, right? And so we're just doing the best we can to capture as many of those good flavors and aromas as we can.
Sure. Well, let's talk about Months, for example.
Right.
A beer that had its roots in the old Alpine Nelson IPA. It is similarly a rye, IPA, or at least has rye as a grist component of it.
Right.
You're up here, at a higher elevation outside of San Diego. You have a different water source than the city. But all of these beers are going to start with water. What does your water start with?
So a little hard, good mineral content, and perfectly suited for making hoppy beers and accentuating hop character.
Decent sulfate component to it.
Correct. And which is awesome. So we don't have to do much in the way of doctoring our water. Most of our stuff goes through a carbon filter, and that might be it, depending on the beer.
Okay.
Yeah. So as minimal as an approach as we can take, and focus on that good water that we are blessed to have being removed from, downtown San Diego. Sorry to all the other brewers that have to deal with that, but it is at an advantage for sure.
Well, these high sulfate levels and even further down in San Diego, high mineral content in general, certainly creates a distinctive style and means that this whole, city and county is geared towards making a certain kind of beer.
It shows.
Yeah.
Through recent medals, of course.
Yeah.
But with Months in particular, we took, the idea for the original Nelson beer that we made so many years ago, and we tweaked it. I added a percentage of rye. There is a different specialty grain. Nelson used to have Maris Otter. We've switched over to using Golden Promise and a higher percentage, just for a more unique character. It's more of a mouthfeel in the finished product. It's something that you couldn't get from just typical two-row, right? It's just a little bit more special, right?
It keeps you. What does special taste like?
Tastes like, a big hug in a glass. I don't know. To me, it sets a soft stage for the hops to play on. So it's not as crisp as like the Maris Otter, right?
Yeah.
It's a little more round on the mouthfeel. Okay. You don't get as much sharpness, although the bitterness is moderate. Well, it's still there. This is completely unfiltered, unfined. So it's, after fermentation, we drop yeast, we dry hop, we let it do its thing, and we send it to the bright tank, carbonate it, and then that's it. Most other beers get a healthy dose of a silica fining agent because we like our clear beer too,
Mm-hmm.
And you just can't get that with the time frames that we're looking at. Of course, we could do it with time and temp, but nobody's got time for that. Really.
So you ramped up the rye in this one too for this Month's iteration?
Yeah, so we're sticking at about 24% rye.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
It's a healthy percentage.
Yeah,
we're up there for sure. Part of that was, historically the beer had just south of 20%. It was right around 18% rye. Which caused problems with the lauter, and it was always something. It would take almost twice as long to brew a batch of Months or Nelson than anything else. And with our bioglucanase or with the aid of enzymes, we're able to circumvent that lengthy lauter or stuck mash or whatever that is,
All right, better living through chemistry.
Absolutely.
Better brewing, brew house experience, better brew day through chemistry.
Every time my attitude improves dramatically when it doesn't take twice as long.
Yeah. Same rye variety.
So we're using a flaked rye product from grain millers. It's easy to introduce. We dose it in line with everything else, right? So we have sort of a reverse grist case operation. So rather than sending everything through a mill to a grist case, loaded in, and then loaded into the mash tun, what we do is we load our grain hopper that falls in directly into the mill augers straight to the mash tun, so it takes a little bit longer to mash in, but everything flows smooth, especially with those rolled oats. What we had found in the past using traditional rye grain, being a smaller kernel, we would have to pre-mill it, and it was a lengthy process, and it just wasn't suited for what we were doing. So we hit the gas and just rolled with rolled out or flaked rye.
Flaked rye. Yeah. Is all of the base malt Golden Promise, or are you mix in some?
There is some 2-row in there and a little bit of acidulated malt for pH adjustment.
Yeah. From that mash process, is there anything special to the way that you do it? Single infusion mash?
Absolutely. Yep. Turn and burn. Keep your temps low, and then boil the snot out of it. We do 90-minute boils traditionally.
Boil the snot out of it. Why?
Because we have a steam-powered system, it's a fairly gentle boil. And so we don't get crazy boilovers. We don't get huge rolling boils. It's almost like a simmer, but a little bit more than that. And so 90 minutes gets you the evaporation you're looking for, color you're looking for, and everything is soft and gentle.
Sure. Let's talk about hops in this, because now we're going to, if we're talking about boiling, we're also talking about adding some hops, into that mix. What is,
and it is a 50-50 split between Nelson Sauvin and Nectaron hops. And the Nectaron was new when we first started McIlhenney Brewing, and it was kind of an epiphany. It still had an experimental number associated with it. It wasn't named yet, but I kind of just followed the money, right? You see where all the research and development funds are going to hops in New Zealand, and they hadn't spent money like this on anything since Nelson Sauvin. And so to me, it just kind of seemed like this was the next one, and it turns out that it pairs up really well with Nelson Sauvin. So Nectaron is one of my new favorite hops. There's a couple that are really hitting the mark nowadays, but
I promise we didn't pay you to say that, nor did New Zealand Hops Limited or BSG or any of our sponsors. No. Yeah. What do you, when you think about the way that they work together, Nelson Sauvin and Nectaron working in concert with each other, how do you, what does that mean? How do you think about the way that they complement each other?
Right. Because the Nectaron is so heavy in what I consider pineapple-like character, which was unique, except for some Michigan-grown Chinook and maybe some of the stuff in the Pacific Northwest, like Oregon Chinook, get a lot of that pineapple. I thought it would play really well with the subtle diesel-like character of Nelson with that unique fruit. Everybody says gooseberry, but I'm pretty confident 90% of the people that say that have never experienced what a gooseberry actually tastes like. Having gone to New Zealand, I can tell you there's not much else that tastes like that.
Yeah.
It's really true. But in concert with the pineapple character from the Nectaron, I thought it was going to work, and I'm happy with it.
Yeah. And so those are the only hops then, hot side and cold side.
Hot and cold. And so it's a decent addition as a first wort addition, then not much else until Whirlpool.
What's why first wort?
I like the way a first wort hop addition comes across. It is like, I keep saying soft, but it's not as aggressive, I think, as like, throw it in 60, 30 minutes or wherever you want, but it loses some of that sharp edge that I think, to me, detracts from drinkability, right? And so we want these beers dry, first and foremost, keep coming back for more, but as flavorful in a approachable way as possible. Right.
Why? I mean, Nectaron and Nelson Sauvin are some expensive hops.
They are.
For something that you're going to put into first wort basically for bittering, and then over a course of a 90-minute boil are going to drive off a lot of the things that you've now paid a lot of money for.
Yeah.
Why stick to those for that kind of first wort hop addition?
To stay true to the hop lineage, it might not make financial sense, but we are we are running a fine line. We are still staying profitable, thank God, which keeps us able to make more of these. We have contracted enough that we can make enough of this beer to hopefully keep at least Southern California happy.
Yeah.
And with our recent delve into direct-to-consumer shipping, the rest of the state of California can enjoy it too. We ship weekly, so
sure. When it comes to bitterness, how much are you pushing through this kind of hot side edition?
So we'll probably hit a charge of maybe 15 to 20 IBUs up front, and then everything else comes from the Whirlpool edition, which we do get significant pickup there, but it's we're probably sitting between 40 and 45 IBUs total.
Yeah. What is that Whirlpool then look like for you?
It's about a pound
because
per barrel.
There's so many fun Whirlpool techniques and timing and temperature and everything else these days. What does yours look like?
So we what I call back brew, right? We brew strong wort and then we dilute down with cool water, right?
Yeah.
And that's our way of driving the temperature down so we don't volatilize all those awesome flavor compounds, right? So we'll try to bring the Whirlpool down to about 180 before we add our Whirlpool edition.
How much do you water back?
It's a couple barrels.
Okay.
Right. So we'll start with maybe 15 barrels of liquid in the kettle, top off to about 17 or so. And then that usually drives the temp down enough that we're happy and we get the most flavor and aroma with as little bitterness as.
What temperature does that drive the Whirlpool down to?
Right around 180 degrees.
Okay.
Yeah, between 180 and 185. Depending on the day.
You're still in that kind of safe space. You're not going too extreme down there.
We're not. We don't need to hit the 160 mark.
Fair enough.
Right.
How long does that process take, and how much hop contact time is there in this Whirlpool?
So we'll spin for 10 minutes and then we'll let it rest for 10 minutes after we've hit our designated gravity.
Yeah.
Right. And so typically we're sitting at 15.5 Plato before we knock out into the kettle. And then our beers dry out like crazy lately, which is a good thing, I guess. Everything's in spec, so we're good to go.
So you're jumping way ahead there. We haven't talked about fermentation, and you went right to dry hopping.
I forgive. Please forgive me.
No, it's perfectly fine. But let's talk about that. What's fermentation then look like for these beers?
We ferment high on the high side, so we start at 68 and we'll do a slight temperature ramp up throughout fermentation. At the end we'll try to hit about 70 degrees just for any diacetyl cleanup if we need to. We haven't had any issues so far, thank God.
So is this just a standard West Coast yeast, or
we use BSI1?
Okay.
Yeah, it's an American ale yeast. Very similar. I'm sure it's a Chico derivative.
Yeah.
But, we've had great success with everything BSI, and that's the one that I like because we use it for everything. And we still get the turbid. I
was gonna say it still holds some of this kind of unfiltered IPA look, and it's not
it's a polyphenol haze.
It's not murky.
No,
it's not that kind of
We'll
heavy protein
for Pure Project.
Exactly.
They do the murkies, and everybody else with the hazies.
They do, and the next episode of the podcast will be Winslow Sawyer of Pure Project talking about their murky process. So
we love those guys.
Yeah. But it does actually hold some some I wouldn't call it haze, just more of a unfiltered heft to it. Yeah,
exactly. And I snapped a photo. Sorry, nobody else will be able to see this, but memory popped up on my Facebook today of what Nelson looked like 8 years ago.
It looks pretty similar.
Pretty similar.
Yeah.
But with new updated ingredients and recipe formulation. And on a new brew house to us.
And that was that same yeast back then, and obviously a little bit of different grist bill.
Right, we were using Cal. Actually, I'm sorry. No, we were using BSI back then. It was never had any issues with it.
Sure. Well, of course, since that point, 8 years ago, haze has come into vogue in a different kind of way, and it's certainly ramped up well past this level of haze. But at the same time, you're putting a lot of stuff into it that could pull out that haze. Right. You're not fining, but when you start adding a heavy dry hop load, you're putting matter into that liquid.
Absolutely.
That certainly can pull some of that back out. What is that dry hopping process then look like for you? Are you dry hopping at all during active fermentation? Is this hitting final and then?
Beer. Yeah, hitting final gravity. We will crash to, we'll take the temperature down from 70 to about 55 degrees. That'll allow a lot of the yeast to flocculate that hasn't already. We'll dump that until we hit beer. And after that, we will dry hop like normal. Everything goes in at once.
Just open the top of the tank.
Dump it in. Yeah, we're providing positive
T90
pressure.
pellets.
T90 pellets for the most part, especially with months. The Nectaron and Nelson Sauvin weren't available in cryo form to me at the time of me writing this recipe.
Sure.
After 24 hours of hops being in the beer, we will recirculate. And so we'll pull from the racking arm at the side of the tank and recirculate up through the bottom of the fermenter for about 30 minutes or so. We'll do that 24 hours after dry hop. Then we'll do it.
You trust your pump to not oxidize your beer through that process.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so far so good.
Okay.
So, yep, we're not going to mess with it because it's working. And
why that method versus rousting or
we feel like we're getting more rousing through the gentle recirc. We're not ripping it. It's it's a gentle flow, but the more contact time with the surface area of the hops themselves. And so we're able to not really extract, but we're able to pull a little bit more of that flavor and aroma out. Now, which I'm happy with.
Yeah. Well, this extraction process is always a trade-off, right? Yeah. Because it is possible to also potentially over-extract and get into some of the characteristics of those hops that you may not
very unpleasant. Yeah.
May not like as much as others.
Correct.
How do you balance that through this process? You want the good, fruity, fun, little bit of the diesel-y.
We're pushing the fine line of enough and too much, right? And so we sit at about 2.5 pounds per barrel dry hop. And part of that is we're leaning a little less than some people might, but a little bit more, just trying to find that balance to get the most expression out of the hops without sacrificing beer in the long run, right? We're trying to get the most out of these tanks. It's not a big operation, so every drop counts, right?
Sure. And obviously having high quality hops, to start with helps quite a bit in that. But
sure.
And so how long, 24 hours, is that what you mentioned for this time process?
24 hours after hops have been introduced to the beer is when we'll recirculate the first time. Okay. 5 days later, approximately, we will recirculate again and then drop the temp to 32. Once it hits 32 degrees, our bright tank has been sanitized, purged, pressurized, and ready to receive beer. And from there, we transfer into the bright, carbonate to the appropriate level, and either package or keg.
So basically 6-7 days, for hop contact time through the dry hop. It seems Correct. That's a good amount of time to leave the beer. And it's only a single stage of dry hopping on this.
Right.
Why do that in one rather than like 2 shorter stages?
I couldn't tell you. This is just how we've been doing it. And because it works, I don't want to mess with it too much. Right. We'll save those experiments for other beers. That's
as good an answer as any. Well, I want to talk to you about how you select, that Nectaron and that Nelson Sauvin for this in order to capture what you really like about it. Before we do that, You like wildly aromatic IPAs and tropical lagers? Good thing Omega designed thiolized yeast just for that reason. Thiolized yeast are a new tool for brewers to bring intense guava and passion fruit aromas out of your malt and hops. And wait, there's more. Omega yeast makes yeast to order with a consistent 1-week lead time, ensuring peak freshness and reliability. Also, keep your brewery running smoothly with 5-Star Chemicals. Their cleaning solutions are specifically formulated to meet the unique needs of breweries, ensuring that your equipment stays clean and free of harmful bacteria and contaminants. From cleaning fermenters to kegs, they have a solution for every step of the brewing process. Use 5-Star Chemicals today and taste the difference in your brews. And ABS Commercial has been a full-service brewery outfitter for over 10 years. They are proud to offer brew houses, tanks, keg washers, and small parts to brewers across the country, as well as equipment for distilling, cider making, wine making, and more. They know the ins and outs of brewing and installation process and can design the perfect setup for you, whether you're just starting out or looking to expand. Contact them today at sales@abs-commercial.com to discuss your customized brewery needs. ABS Commercial, we are brewers. So, Shawn, as you are rubbing and evaluating hops for selection, and it is kind of fun that you get to select some of these things and and do that, which hey, you guys have earned that. When you are, how do you think about the selection process? What does that range in Nectaron and Nelson Sauvin look like for you? What are some of the characters that you are specifically looking for in the rub? And of course, since you guys have been brewing with these hops for so long, what makes it from the rub into the finished beer? What doesn't? What can you ignore in that kind of evaluation process?
We look for a strong fruit-forward character, whether it be passion fruit or guava or gooseberry or what have you. And middle of the senses, you're looking for that white wine character, that Sauvignon Blanc grape expression with a finish that might be slightly diesel-y or fuel-like, I guess, for lack of a better descriptor. These are all things that were part of Nelson from the get-go. When we first started using it, that first batch of the Golden Rye IPA, because we didn't even have a name for it at the time, the first review we ever got from it was somebody said it smelled like the inside of a dirty garage. And I think a lot of people agreed, took it to heart, and that's what they remembered about the original versions of Nelson was, I want it to smell like an automotive garage. And to me, I'd like a little less of that and more of the fruit expression for personal reasons, I guess. Drinking a dirty garage doesn't sound like something I'd want to do a lot of.
Yeah.
So, that very vibrant fruit character is paramount. It's at the top of the list of what we want from the hops. And they are polarizingly different than Nelson Sauvin and Nectaron, and I think that's why they work so well together. Is you've got a very distinct pineapple, with a hint of citrus in one, and then you've got this wine-like sweet fruit character coming from the Nelson Sauvin, and together they work.
Yeah. Are there some things that as you're rubbing them are like an instant, hey, no, I'm going to step away from this one?
There wasn't many. So we were able to select our Nelson Sauvin from Freestyle Farms in New Zealand, and they based it off of pick date. And so over the course of, I think it was 10 days, they had different lots at different picking times that the expressions became slightly different. And right in the middle, I think, is the sweet spot. You get the maximum amount of the fruit combined with the hints of cannabis and the diesel-like character that some people love and some people just can't stand.
Sure. What is that? Yeah. What is that pick date? What is early pick Nelson Sauvin, like versus late pick Nelson Sauvin?
They're more citrus forward towards the beginning.
Okay.
Early harvest definitely focuses more on citrus.
Yeah.
Later harvest, the citrus kind of falls to the background. Fruit is a little bit more mild, and you get more of that diesel-y quality.
It's the same thing everywhere, right?
There's that perfect window,
Yeah.
and it's kind of specific to whatever brewer is smelling it at the time.
Yeah.
You know?
And I imagine there's some variance too amongst the growers in,
Right.
in New Zealand, and not everyone, is growing in the same exact soil. And, obviously there's lots of things that can change around that, but interesting to see, like, it's very similar, more alpha later on, as well as, more of that onion and garlic and, for late pick
With
American, Northwestern hops. And it seems like, some things are similar wherever you go.
Right. Yeah, it's the same there. And
So and same with Nectaron as Nelson Sauvin.
Right. Unfortunately, I did not get to select, and so we were just dealt whatever they had.
Hey,
and
it's working.
Yep. And even though I had placed a request with New Zealand Hops Limited directly and told them the plight of, new brewery, but hey, my dad was the guy that introduced the U.S. to your hop products, and there was no love. There was no nothing. It was, thanks for the story. And you can get our hops through BSG like everybody else.
All right.
So we did, which is fine. But now that...
maybe they'll hear this podcast and have a change of heart. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of the other ways that you blend these hops outside of months. Obviously Nectaron and Nelson Sauvin together make a great mix.
Sure.
But you've got a lot of IPAs up here on the board that play with other hop varieties, even though they are very focused. I mean, you don't have a ton of other hops, but you do mix these hops in other ways with Pacific Northwest hops. Yeah. It's almost like there's this house New Zealand hop flavor to McIlhenney coming out of that Alpine tradition.
Yeah, and it's going to get even better. Next week we have a collaboration brew slated with Freestyle Farms. They're bringing over some of their early harvest New Zealand Cascade, which I was told had a very, very complex white grapefruit character coming through, and then some high thiol, lots of Motueka that they're really, really excited for. A complex tropical fruit character and that classic lemon lime zest thing going on. And so I'm going to try to make them a beer that they can be proud that their name is on.
Sure.
But some of the other hops, like so our house IPA, as I call it, the Wizard's Wand. It's a Strata Mosaic beer, and just two hops that in and of themselves are great by themselves, but together they offer something that you just couldn't get one-dimensionally. And in a 6.5% package, it infinitely drinkable. That's why we try to make it as often as we can. And then,
well, with that, so that's your West Coast IPA as opposed to this rye IPA in months.
Right.
How does the grist bill differ for that? Using and I imagine you're tweaking the recipe to fit those hops and that kind of expression and this idea that you've now built for that beer.
Right.
What does that idea look like, and how does that express itself in those recipes?
Rely heavily on two-row, of course, being the base of the beer, and we try not to make it
but no golden promise in that one.
There is golden promise, and there is a Breeze product called Gold Pills Vienna. It's a very low color. It's not a traditional Vienna. It's more Pilsner-like than anything, but it offers another layer of flavor. Right.
What kind of percentages do you have to use to get just the right flavor?
We're between 10 and 12%.
Okay.
Maybe as high as 15. I'd have to look at the recipe, but off the top of my head, no more than 15%, but a significant amount nonetheless.
And that's enough for you to actually get something out of it and justify the additional complexity of...
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Just enough to keep you guessing, right? Make you explore the beer rather than just sit there and drink it. It's an experience, right? And to that, it sets the stage for the hops, right? And the true star of the show. But we want that stage to be elevated. We want people to get good visual of, again, the stars of the show and the hops.
And so depending on what hops you're using, you will structure a grist bill that's going to help you accentuate and lift up those specific hops.
Right. Like our double IPA contains a percentage of oats just for a softer mouthfeel. Right. And it's those are Citra,
because of the intensity of the hops
Amarillo,
itself.
Right. And the amounts that we're using. But it makes the beer more approachable, especially for its ABV at 8.5% almost, and it feels like you're drinking a 7% beer. It's something kind of special.
Yeah.
A little dangerous, but
But even on this single West Coast IPA, as you call it, I'm still curious about this, like how even in those, depending on what hops you're using, will tweak the grist bill just to fit that. Not the first time I've heard this from a brewer, but I'm always amazed at I've talked to brewers here in Southern California who've mentioned, and Central California using different Pilsner malt based on, in their IPAs based on which hops they're using for that same kind of reason. Right. And I think it's interesting to look at these kinds of like multivariate equations that you're building, and with these different dependencies to try to accentuate these kinds of things and understand why, you're making some of those decisions. Right. Are there other, kind of hops that lead to certain decisions around, what malts you're using in those beers?
Not so much. It's less dependent on the malt, but I definitely want it to be unique. I don't want to make the same thing every time, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to get stuck in that rut. I tried it before. It's not something that interests me at all. And so playing around with the different types of malt and seeing what works and what doesn't. And, when it does work, incorporating that into new beers that we make, which I'm trying to stay on top of. It's,
sure.
Trying to keep it fun still.
Are there, body considerations, that where you want more obviously Muntz, has a bigger body than, typically lean San Diego West Coast IPA. Yeah. And obviously you're trying to, that's purposeful in order to balance the hops in the way that you're trying to achieve it. Are there some other beers where you find you're doing the same kind of thing, like tweaking body in order to support
less so. Yeah. Okay. Muntz, I think it definitely needs a substantial mouthfeel, right?
Yeah.
And that comes from the rye. That's that unique grain that everybody tries to put their finger on and try to, what is that? It's something that keeps them coming back for more. It's great. But again, with the other ones, it's keep it light, keep it crisp, keep it clean, and again, just try to accentuate the hops.
Yeah.
In the end, for the hoppy beers, and then when it comes to any of the malty beers, of course, it's
sure
hops matter much less.
We should just acknowledge that you do brew a whole bunch of what we might call conventional craft beer styles, from dry Irish stout to red ale, apricot blonde ale. I mean, some of these feel like 2 decades ago throwback American craft beers.
Which they might be, but it's we try to make something for anybody that walks through the door, whether they're a fan of beer or not. The people that come in and asking for a seltzer or whatever, we do have a flavored blonde ale that is light, crisp, and refreshing with a hint of fruit flavor that 9 times out of 10 people will drink it and be satisfied and not ask for a seltzer.
Well, it fits, because this is very much a community business here, in Alpine, and you've always envisioned it that way, even if you are going to make IPAs that folks will crave from all over the state or around the country or around the world. Yeah. Let's talk about scaling these IPAs. You mentioned adding oats in the double IPA. Mm-hmm. You've got a triple IPA up on the board there, and so there are. As you go through this kind of scaling process, there are, interestingly enough, I think, hops and hop expressions that just work better at that higher ABV realm, rather than that single, if you build and support them the right kind of way. And, I think especially in that hazy IPA world, like the hazy double IPAs can often be more compelling beers than hazy single IPAs, just because now you get that full saturation and that everything that you really want out of that. Even if I don't love drinking 8.5% beers all the time, I can experience the joy in that. So talk to me about, from in your brewer mindset, scaling these beers up and, what factors you then amp up in order to keep the balance where you want it in these.
Right. Well, especially with the triple IPA, it's we need to have happy, healthy yeast that is going to attenuate as much as it possibly can, because we need a dry beer that will mask the alcohol that we've created, right, and make it drinkable for, say, an 11% beer, which becomes now, it doesn't taste like it. It tastes like a 7%er, and I think I can have 2 or 3 of these. And well, next thing you know, you really hope people are at home when they're doing that, because we don't have very good Uber service here in Alpine. And we don't have enough cots out back to keep all the drunk people here overnight. But we really want to make an approachable package, right? So you make a beer that, even though it's high in ABV, you use malt that you know is going to be fairly neutral. Again, let the hops shine. That's the true star of the show with a beer like that. And then on the hopping side, it just became, how many different versions of hop products can I use effectively and not have it be overwhelming, not taste, either too bitter or too harsh or too cloying or, this, that, or the other thing, finding a good balance. And I think I achieved that through multi-stage dry hopping, which very
so you
interesting.
don't multi-stage dry hop the smaller beers. You do that.
Not always.
Not always.
We have one that we do a double dry hop process.
Yeah.
And, I do what's called a knockout hop addition, or what I'm calling a knockout hop addition. So I'll put hops into the fermenter before I knock beer out into it. And so create that biotransformation effect prior to fermentation, or as soon as fermentation starts, it's happening. Right. And instead of risking a geyser during active fermentation or anything of that nature, we just get it done all the way at the beginning and then do a traditional dry hop after. With this beer, the triple IPA, we ran a hop back. So ran all the wort through the hop back on the way to the fermenter. Then traditional dry hop with, there was leaf hops in the hop back and Incognito Citra. Then the traditional dry hop of
Incognito in your hop back.
Yeah.
How's that work?
Pretty good.
Okay.
We've got the leaf hop in there to help strain, for lack of a better, and then we've got the screen in there, which helps it too. Does restrict flow a little bit, but every bit of it was making its way into the finished product. And so we may or may not have some biotransformation effects from that addition, making its way all the way through the wort stream to the fermenter.
How much, in a triple IPA to
2 liters,
okay,
on top of 10 pounds of leaf in the hop back. So it was a pretty significant amount. Plus the Whirlpool edition. It ended up being a fairly expensive hopped beer. After the traditional dry hop, I refilled the hop back with more leaf hops, added some Spectrum.
Leaf hops too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now this was a trick from our previous triple IPA with Alpine Beer Company, Exponential Hoppiness. We would take the finished product, prior to carbonation, send it to a bright tank filled with a body bag size mesh bag of leaf hops and a little bit of American white oak. We have since strayed away from the white oak edition, but that was one of the things that also helped mask that high ABV. We didn't need it with this.
Why leaf hops?
It's a unique expression, and it's something that I don't think enough brewers are experimenting with.
Really?
It's a more raw hop character, right? It's not processed. And it's unique, and it's something that you can't get from traditional T90s.
Sure. What hops do you use in leaf format? Strata
for this one. We've gone all over the place. I've had Mosaic, I've had Idaho 7, Amarillo, but most lately was Strata, and because of its freshness, it was the right move.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine some work better than others.
Sure.
Yeah.
I haven't been disappointed yet.
Okay.
At least for not for the last 15 years. Back when Amarillo started getting more seeds than hops, it was time to switch it up.
Now, if I'm putting my brewer hat on and I see you're throwing a giant bag full of whole leaf hops into this already really, really expensive triple IPA that you've spent so much money on hops in, and now you're going to throw this thing in that's going to absorb so much of that liquid that you're going to get, you're going to get even less yield out of this. It sounds a little insane, Shawn.
Yeah, marginally insane, but we've always tried to push the envelope, explore it to its fullest, right? How much can we do and how much can we get away with? The beauty of our hotback is it's pressurizable.
Okay.
And so we
You can squeeze it all back out then.
provide as much pressure as we can without breaking the screen inside. We don't want to bust any welds, but just a couple PSI and we're able to push all that liquid out. And so loss was probably in, a gallon or less on the overall scheme of things, which is...
That's very reasonable.
I would consider that acceptable.
Yes.
Less insane than you may have thought before, right?
Well, you see, and that's why I asked the question.
Right. Yeah.
Of course you've got a solution to this.
Sure. Yep. Everything's good until it's not. And luckily it just stayed good.
So with this, hop back, coming out, with some biotransformation potential, does your yeast, this BSI-1 accomplish that? And what do you're talking about a lot of factors here in terms of a lot of intense hop flavors that could also,
go south real quick.
It could, and it's hard to pick apart what is the biotransformation effect, what is just the effect of all this massive hop saturation, and then what's the effect of the increased efficiency of an extraction because you're at a higher alcohol solution with a 11% triple IPA. It's going to pull more out at that alcohol level just because alcohol is a much better solvent for that kind of thing.
It's all part of the plan.
Yeah. But what do you think you get out of that in terms of that biotransformative effect using Incognito and a hopback along with whole leaf hops?
There was more, I don't want to call it tropical fruit expression, but definitely a fruitier character and almost bordering on a melon-like quality, and not from an over-oxidation standpoint or over-oxygenation during wort transfer. A lot of the times when you get like that honeydew or melon character, it's from too much oxygen on the knockout. We found that out the hard way. And so there's a fine line between enough and too much oxygen as well. The biotransformation effect, it takes the fruit quality and it amplifies it, if that makes sense, right? And so you get more and slightly different. It goes into that tropical realm more than the citrus forward, right? And so with that, it's an entirely new hop blend at that point, which is it's great. It's what we want.
Are there other hop products that you're really excited about that, again, you love playing with hops. You've got everything here from, hop keef to, CGX strata, Incognito. I mean, it's, cryo all in one beer. You are definitely pushing some limits in a lot of different ways. Are there some of these that you really enjoy using? You like the expression of? Are there some hops that you prefer in some of these either cryo or flowable kind of product form versus, and obviously you've got some where you like them in leaf too, which is such a cool throwback.
Yeah. Gotta pay our respects to the classics, right?
Yeah.
What got us here in the first place. As far as the new products, I'm really excited about the Sub-Zero Hop Keef from Freestyle Farms in New Zealand. They've partnered up with an extract company that is making phenomenal flowable hop extracts that are not as one-dimensional as some of the earlier iterations may have been.
Yeah.
And so providing a broader spectrum of hop character, which is awesome. And just the fact that you're able to open up a container and dump it in or measure out your amounts and literally just dump it into the tank, whether it be take the PRV off the tank or whatever opening you have, get it in there, funnel or not, and that's awesome. Some of the newer products like Spectrum or Incognito. Incognito is a little bit more flowable than the Spectrum. Spectrum might have a more round hop character to it, but it is a pain in the butt to get out of the packaging. And so that, and the trade-off, a liter of Spectrum is equivalent to maybe 10 to 14 pounds of pellet product, whereas the Incognito it contains a bunch of the alpha acid, so you're still getting bittering, and I can't even remember what the ratio is. But some of these new hop keef products, it's what it amounts to is we get more product out of the fermenter into the bright tank, into the package or can, and that to me makes it affordable, right? If we get more beer, we make more money and keep this cycle going.
Sure.
as long as we can, because I don't want to do anything else.
Yeah. How does cryo fit into that for you?
I'm a big fan. I don't like to use it exclusively. I think having a lot of that vegetal matter removed will make it seem a little one-sided, or I like to say hollow. There's something missing. You know, drinking beers that were made traditionally for so long, when you remove one of those ingredients, then it's different, and it can't quantify if it's a good or a bad different, right? So more experimentation, and once we find the amounts that we like and the ratios that we like, then we kind of stick with that, and then we get to play around with varietals. Right?
Yeah,
and accessibility, that has a lot. They're getting harder and harder to come by.
Really,
they are, and more expensive. And being a small operation, we don't have a lot of cold storage space for these things.
Right.
We don't have a lot of money to dedicate to contracts, and so we do what we can with what we got.
Sure. What what are you most excited about experimenting with over the next 12 months?
I will try to get into the thiolized yeast and probably look at the thiolized lager yeast, and maybe doing something like a West Coast Pilsner or something in that vein with that thiolized yeast strain.
Yeah.
I have yet to try. We'll see what we can do with that. Aside from that,
what does West Coast Pilsner or New Zealand style Pilsner mean to you? I mean, we call it New Zealand style, but it's like, it's just hop,
just use the New Zealand hops.
Pilsner with New Zealand hops, right?
Yeah. So for me, West Coast Pilsner would be take those Pacific Northwest hops that we love so much and find a way to make those work.
Where's the line for you between, West Coast Pilsner and say
Pale
ale? Yeah. Especially now in this age when we've got plenty of brewers in California and other places, even Oregon, making IPAs using lager yeast, and a lot of IPA makers using Pilsner malt in beers that they that are still branded as IPA, and so all of the lines here are getting completely blurred, which honestly I don't care about. I'm perfectly happy with that. I think that
as long as it tastes good,
we put too much stock in some of these, the idea of style, and I think those styles should be more descriptive than prescriptive. But at the same time, where is that line for you between those things?
Fermentation temperature and ingredients for sure, right?
Okay.
And so to call a beer a Pilsner, right? To me, you have to use lager yeast.
Yeah.
Right.
That should be
mostly Pilsner malt,
yes.
And then throw the West Coast moniker on there, and then use West Coast hops, right? Wouldn't that make sense?
I guess.
Yeah, sure. And then I don't know, man. Again, it is a fine line, and I like the experimentation. I like the pushing boundaries. I like the making of new styles, or So I guess it's really up to the brewer to draw that line, and the consumer to accept it.
Sure.
And if they don't, then find something that you like. And
I think for a last question here, I want to look at it, make a big picture stab at this. This brewery here in Alpine has so much. It has a lot of history to it, and has been pretty pivotal in this broader world of craft beer, and been influential far outside the boundaries of the town Alpine that it's in here. You went through, this past saga that we're not going to talk about.
Sure.
You came out of that. Why relaunch this brewery here with your own name, your family's name on the brewery? Why get back into it after some of the challenges that last saga, presented? A lot of brewers going through that would have become so jaded that they wouldn't want to do this again.
Right.
And you're back in it. You're a very small operation. You're brewing the beer on the brew house again, this many years into your experience in craft beer. You're back on the brew deck. It's not a retired and have the staff do all of this for you. You are in the trenches and doing the work.
almost every day.
And it's not something that you had to do.
Right.
Why do it? And what do you hope to achieve with McIlhenney Brewing over the next 5 years?
I wanted to create a legacy, something that my dad would be proud of. Coming from a great brewer of such and turning into a brewer myself. Maybe my son will follow my footsteps. Maybe my daughter. I don't know. We'll give them the opportunity. I won't force them into anything, but give them the option if they want it. But what really got me back into it was towards the end of my career with Alpine Beer Company. Being the brewmaster, I strayed so far away from making beer. I was basically supervising at times or just writing a recipe that I didn't even get to brew. And I didn't like that direction. I'm not a sales guy. I've got a good face for radio, right? I don't need to do public appearances or meet the brewer things to sell product. I want to make good product that sells itself, which is fortunately what we've been doing for the last 2 years. It's really good, but brewing became fun again, and for the last couple of years it wasn't, and I didn't like that. I wanted to make my beers. I wanted to make the beers that I wanted to drink, and wanted to see the smile on people's faces drinking the beers here in the tap room, and I didn't see another opportunity like that anywhere else because the facility became available and we were able to retain the majority of the equipment. It was kind of a no-brainer. We had the funds, we had the space, we got the equipment. Do it. See what happens.
Well, all right. And now we get to taste this latest iteration and development on this long history of beer making up here in Alpine.
The saga continues.
And maybe it'll continue for generations to come.
Fingers crossed.
What a nice way to think about it, and a great place to bring this to a close. G&D Chillers has set the standard on quality, service, and reliability with 24/7 service and support. Experience Nectaron in your next West Coast or hazy IPA, available from BSG. Try Old Orchard's flavored craft juice concentrate blends in your next craft beverage. Join the AccuBrew community and experience 24/7 peace of mind. ProBrew's rotary can fillers reduce waste and produce higher quality packaged beer. Tabsky QR code ordering is the future of brewery ordering. Omega stylized yeasts bring intense guava and passion fruit aromas out of your malt and hops. Keep your brewery running smoothly with 5-star chemicals, and ABS Commercial is your full service brewery outfitter. If you've enjoyed this episode and any others, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button, and let us send you the magazine, all year long, so you can get more recipes, information, and insight from some of the world's greatest brewers. Shawn, if people want to learn more about McIlhenney, where do they find you in real life and out there in the digital space?
Facebook, Instagram, or at our website, McIlhenneybrewing.com. Check us out. Give us a follow. See what we're up to.
Make a pilgrimage up here to the tap room and brewery in Alpine, California, the place where it got its start and where it's back again, continuing the legacy right here. It was great to talk to you about brewing. Shawn, cheers.
Thank you very much.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.